The night rain hit the windshield like shattered glass as Ethan gripped the steering wheel, his breath fogging the inside of the car. The city lights blurred through the drizzle, and time itself seemed to hold its breath when the woman in the back seat suddenly gasped, her lips turning blue, her chest barely rising. He had seen danger before, but never like this. Without thinking twice, he slammed the brakes, jumped from the driver's seat, and did the unthinkable. He pressed his lips to hers, trying desperately to breathe life into the woman whose world was nothing like his. That single act, born from panic, humanity, and desperate hope, became the moment that would change both their lives forever. If you believe in kindness, fate, and second chances, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soul Tale. Every story here reminds us that sometimes life's most unexpected moments bring out the most beautiful truths. Ethan Cole was not the kind of man people noticed. A 32-year-old single father working two jobs, he lived in a small, one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint, and the scent of hope mixed with struggle. His daughter, Lily, was 6, bright-eyed, fragile, and battling a heart condition that kept him awake most nights. Every dollar he earned as a private chauffeur went to her treatment, every dream he once had replaced by a quiet prayer that she'd live long enough to see her 7th birthday. On the other side of that world was Isabella Grant, the 26-year-old heiress of the Grant Corporation, a woman whose name carried weight in business circles, yet whose eyes held exhaustion more than pride. She had wealth beyond measure, but no peace. Her father's empire was ruthless, her life full of bodyguards, fake smiles, and media stories that told nothing of the loneliness she felt inside her golden cage. When she hired Ethan's car that night, it wasn't just for travel, it was her escape, her moment of silence in a world that never let her breathe. That evening the storm had trapped them on a deserted stretch near the outskirts of the city. The roads were slick, the sky rumbling with thunder, and the hum of the car engine was the only sound. Isabella sat quietly in the back, scrolling through her phone until suddenly her breath hitched. Ethan glanced at the rearview mirror, alarmed to see her clutching her chest. Her body went limp in seconds. Panic surged through him. He had no medical training, no idea what was happening, but something in him refused to freeze. He rushed to her side, calling her name, shaking her shoulder. Her pulse was faint, her breathing shallow. He fumbled for his phone, but the signal was gone. No ambulance, no help. Just him, the rain, and her fatting heartbeat. He remembered something, a CPR tutorial he'd watched years ago when his daughter had trouble breathing once. Without hesitation, he tilted Isabella's head back, sealed his mouth over hers, and breathed for her. The first breath didn't work, nor the second. By the third, tears blurred his eyes as he whispered, "Don't die. Please don't die." Then a cough, a sharp, miraculous gasp that cut through the storm. She opened her eyes slowly, confusion washing over her face, then darkness again as she fainted from exhaustion. When she woke up hours later in the hospital, Ethan was gone. He'd dropped her at the emergency entrance, told the nurses she'd collapsed, and quietly disappeared into the night. But fate wasn't done with them yet. Days later, Isabella's assistant tracked him down, not to thank him but to demand answers. "You kissed Miss Grant," they accused coldly. Ethan froze, ashamed, trying to explain what had happened, but words failed him. The story made it to the tabloids. Unknown chauffeur kisses heiress in secret encounter. And within hours his name was everywhere. He lost his job, his reputation shattered. People called him opportunist, liar, and worse. Isabella, however, saw the truth in his eyes when she finally met him again. Her father's lawyers had arranged a meeting, expecting to humiliate him publicly, but instead she asked everyone to leave the room. "You saved my life," she said softly, "and I ruined yours." He looked down, his worn hands trembling, and replied, "You don't owe me anything, ma'am, just forget it happened." But she couldn't. Something about his honesty, his pain, and the raw simplicity of his words haunted her. For the first time in years, she saw someone who didn't want anything from her. No money, no fame, just peace. She began looking into his life, discovering how he was struggling to afford his daughter's surgery, how he lived with quiet dignity despite his hardships. One evening, against her father's strict warnings, she visited him. When she stepped into his apartment, she was stunned. There was no luxury, just warmth. A single bed, a child's laughter, a drawing of Daddy and me taped to the fridge. Lily looked up and smiled shyly. "Are you Daddy's friend?" she asked. Isabella knelt down, her eyes softening. "Yes," she whispered. "I think I am." From that moment, something gentle yet unexplainable grew between them. She began visiting often, bringing groceries, reading stories to Lily, and slowly breaking down the walls Ethan had built. He tried to resist, terrified of the world she came from, but she kept coming back. Every time she smiled at Lily, every time she laughed at his worn-out jokes, Ethan's heart betrayed him a little more. But their worlds were never meant to blend easily. The media soon caught wind of her visits, turning their connection into scandal. "Heiress falls for her driver," headlines screamed. Her father, furious, gave her an ultimatum: end it or lose everything. She chose silence instead of obedience, walking away from her corporate throne to live on her own terms. Ethan, seeing the damage caused to her name, begged her to return to her world. "You don't belong here," he said, his voice breaking. "I can survive without love, but I can't bear to see you fall because of me." But Isabella's answer came with tears and trembling lips. "You didn't kiss me to save your life, Ethan. You kissed me to save mine, and that's something I can't walk away from." Months later, life took another turn. Lily's heart condition worsened. The operation cost more than Ethan could ever imagine. Without telling him, Isabella sold her shares in the company her father built. Every dollar went toward Lily's surgery. When Ethan found out, he broke down completely, realizing love isn't always born from luxury, but sacrifice. The surgery succeeded. Lily survived. And in that hospital corridor, surrounded by sterile lights and the scent of disinfectant, Ethan looked at Isabella, the woman whose life he once saved, now the woman who had saved his world. He didn't have words left, only gratitude and a tear that spoke everything his heart couldn't say. Years passed. They never lived like billionaires, but like a family that had known loss, grace, and redemption. Isabella's father eventually softened, seeing his daughter's happiness reflected in the man he once despised. Ethan returned to driving, but this time not for money, for freedom. Isabella opened a foundation for single parents and underprivileged children, naming it Lily's Promise. Sometimes people asked her why she'd given up her empire for a man like Ethan. She always smiled and said, "Because once he gave up everything just to breathe life into someone he didn't even know." And on quiet nights, when rain pattered against the window, she'd remember that first storm, the night that began with a desperate kiss and ended with a love no storm could ever wash away. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soul Tale. Every click keeps stories like this alive, stories that remind us love doesn't come from wealth, but from courage. Rose special request: comment below, love can save a life. If you believe some hearts are meant to find each other, no matter how impossible it seems.